Hey, you. Good evening and morning to you. CIG's Jake Acapella and Dan Griffiths, aka Gozer, got together and put out a Cargo Refactor AMA answering questions of the community. Let's hop right in, like up, sub up, and ring up like a boss. First question, are the external cargo pods of the Prospector, Mole, and Raft going to be detachable and replaceable? If not, what happens to the mined ore and cargo aboard these ships if they're destroyed? Via Jake Acapella, currently all of these ships will function similarly to how they do now once 3.18 comes online. Resource pods such as saddlebags or fuel pods won't be detachable in this release, as further work on vehicle tractor beams is required. Regarding external cargo such as the Hull series and Raft, these will detach upon vehicle destruction as outlined in the ISC episode. Do I need to neatly stack boxes all square in order to register them correctly? Via Gozer, containers are snapped to the grid when they're placed in the ship. Anything in the ship or attached to the grid will be able to sell at the commodity kiosk. Buying cargo works just like it does now. You purchase from a kiosk, that cargo is loaded into the ship automatically and attached to the grid. Once outside of the armistice zone, you're free to move it around and snap it to the grid with the tractor beam however you want. I'm wondering, does anything in the ship mean we can stuff more cargo than is allowed on the cargo grid and sell it, bypassing the ship's cargo specs? I'm assuming if it fits its ships, but the drawback, if that's the case, will be the additional mass. I mean, this is later down the road, but the additional mass, especially or maybe only in atmosphere. If your thrusters aren't rated for the extra mass, you may be on the struggle bus trying to land on the planetary surface with your ship overloaded. But Gozer addressed this with, you would have a hard time making it fit, but sure, the cargo grid has a max capacity. Anything else is considered loose items, and if they're on the ship, you can sell them. This is not to be confused with the FPS items such as guns, ammunition, stems, armor, etc. Those are technically in a third inventory in your ship, although I have plans for that stuff too. When it comes to Cargo Refactor and Piracy, what have you thought of to encourage player-to-player boarding actions with this feature? Well, so we hinted about this in the ISC and it wasn't very clear. With 3.18, we're introducing the concept of soft death. There is a 70% chance a vehicle will die with its interior and cargo intact from combat deaths. Explosive deaths or deaths by game rules, as in near a barrier or touching water, for example, won't trigger a soft death. What this means, 70% of the time, you and your crew are still alive and the cargo is still attached to the ship when a combat death occurs, which the ship reaches 0 health in combat. The 30% of the time that this doesn't happen, your ship explodes and cargo is pushed out, and then 0 to 90% of that cargo remains, with the average of that being 45% of cargo surviving. So basically, if somebody takes you down, your ship is most likely gonna die on you with the interior and cargo intact. If you got help nearby, there's a chance they can fend off the attackers and help you retrieve all of your cargo. This will make access to ship convoys an extremely valuable asset. The 30% chance of an explosion will on average destroy a little more than half of your cargo, with the rest releasing from the grid and floating away. And at that point, it's a free-for-all, even if you have help. Makes me think of that World War II flick, Greyhound, with Tom Hanks. But anyway, are we getting any dynamic pricing changes to commodities? Commodity prices will not change for 3.18, mainly because if we did it now, we would have to do it all over again as soon as we add manual loading and unloading to the loop. Loading and unloading will dramatically change the whole commodity trading loop. This is where you're gonna have to start budgeting and making more strategic purchases, since time and costs for loading, unloading help will cut into your profits, but we're ways out from that, so we'll worry about that when it comes. Will cargo containers stolen by pirates be recognized by buyers as being stolen? If so, then what happens if I willingly transfer my cargo to another player to sell for me? When a player purchases commodities, those are owned by the player that purchases them. Anyone else trying to sell them will have to use a no questions asked terminal, and they'll not receive the full price for anything that they're trying to sell. Even if I give a cargo container to a friend, they would have to sell it at a no questions asked terminal, and they would not get the full price for the commodity. Grim Hex, for example, will be a location I could fence my stolen goods. All right, so this here breaks the ability of friends and orgs to work together with cargo. But there was an ISC a year or two ago where they stated that there would be transfer of ownership, which would allow you to sell things to each other. They didn't specifically mention cargo, but I'm gonna assume that's got to be on the menu. Otherwise, the efficacy of orgs shrinks a little bit, a lot of bit when it comes to cargo. Someone on Spectrum mentioned that would also force the few no questions asked buyers to accept all cargo. Otherwise, you can end up with unsellable cargo. So we'll have to wait and see how this is addressed. Moving on. Hi, will cargo boxes have any kind of signatures to be picked up by vehicle pings? Cargo containers can be scanned and AR markers will be present if they survive the explosion. We have also added colored tints to the containers so you can at least identify what category they belong to, such as metals or processed goods. All right, so the question here is, will you be able to scan through the hole before you attack? Because real pirates won't be interested in wasting their time attacking ships running scrap. The space cops can do it, so we should be able to do it as well. Maybe that might depend on the scanners you're rocking. We'll see. Are larger cargo containers still planned with the refactor like the ones on the raft? Why just one SCU? Why not 10 SCU boxes for less entities? Larger than one SCU containers are still planned, but at the moment, everything is still bought and sold as one SCU cargo containers. Pretty straightforward. Larger containers would cut down load, unload times in the future. Still, I wouldn't be mad if those stayed ship specific features like on the raft, the whole series, and I think the railing. A commenter questioned if the raft would spawn one SCU boxes if destroyed, which I think would be interesting to have to deal with if they don't. Any new commodities coming in 3.18? The only new addition that I can think of is RMC, which is what you get from hole scraping. These can be sold at commodity kiosks. All right, so I'm wondering if we'll be buying RMC, aka recycled composite material, in smaller quantities to keep us stocked up for repairs that we'll need to make. Will cargo loading timers be part of 3.18? At the moment, nothing changes with loading and unloading. This is handled automatically as it has been in the past. Once manual loading and unloading becomes a reality, you will have the option to choose between the two. If you choose to have the location do the loading and unloading, there will be a cost and a time where your ship is unavailable while the process completes, much like the current refinery gameplay. The question is, if you choose to pay for automatic loading, how much faster will it be than manually loading? I know there's some variables like the amount of resources at that location for loading, or if you have help to manually load. It's something you'll have to take into account. Also, are folks that are loading taking up space, preventing others from buying? An outpost has 2 landing pads. Does the third person that flies in wait for an opening and then ram the 4th person that tries to bogart their way into the first opening? And lastly, since our ship becomes unavailable during loads, will we get Minesweeper and Tetris on our mobiGlas to pass the time? These are the questions, people. I would love to be able to buy 1 or 2 SCU boxes to be able to put whatever we want in them. Would make org events easier, could buy all the armor for ground battles, extra weapons and ammo, etc. I want you to be able to do that as well, rather than having to blow up your ship and create them yourself. On top of that, I want you to be able to carry those around, loot bunkers, fill them up, and then snap them to the grid once you're back at your ship. I also want you to be able to do all this and then go back to a station and go sell all of this without having to transfer it to the station's local inventory in order to do so. That said, it probably won't make it into 3.18. At some point, however, it will be a thing. This is where I use the dreaded soon. On the ISC, cargo missions were mentioned. Can you go into any detail on what these missions will be like and how they will work? In my mind and hopes, they will be something along the lines of this post. The post is an idea for cargo hauling contracts. After 3.18, we want to separate commodity trading from cargo hauling. Commodity trading will be high risk, high reward. If you invest a large amount of your money, you will also have to manage the cost of loading, unloading, as well as protection. On the other hand, cargo hauling is just moving things for NPCs from point A to B. You're not tied to it financially, and it will be moving things that pirates don't care about, as there will be no profit in it for them. The first step here is we will be adding cargo hauling missions that extend the current box delivery missions once you can manually load and unload your own cargo. They'll start small and get larger, and the only thing the players are risking is reputation. I love that this isn't something that will attract pirates, just let you throw your space trucker snapback on and move some freight. Overall, 3.18's Cargo Refactor won't be an extreme change from what we have now, except when it comes to ship destruction. With a 70% chance that your ship will die rather than explode, it means a few things. Eventually, you'll need help. There's not many organized piracy orgs at the moment, but now that there's a reason for it, more will form and solo hauling will be riskier and riskier. Solo pilots who just want to blow up your cargo for whatever reason already exist. And in 3.18, they might have a tougher time because of the adjustments with the law system. They're not the professionals who can prevent you from dipping out in quantum control mode. What's kind of cool, kind of funny is how it'll increase transport and rescue beacons as well as cooperative play in general. There was a study in how introducing wolves into the American West improved ecosystems by influencing the behavior of their prey, and it ripples down to the point of increasing certain animal population, gives vegetation a chance to recover from overgrazing, and even the bodies of water were improved, benefiting the aquatic animals. They changed rivers, man. The Star Citizen analog will be the cargo attracting pirates, which will check commodities pricing and also cause more players to cooperate, and players who want to play support roles responding to beacons will finally get their shot. More anti-piracy groups will form, creating skirmishes, possibly even wars, which will draw out the bigger ships out of mothballs like the Hammerhead, and the result is a more balanced and thriving universe. Well, system for the time being. But that's if we get an increase in commodity volume available for purchase. If not, then it doesn't mean much. Most folks have given up on high value commodities trading because who wants to pull out the big hauler and take the risks on the hope that there's enough out there to purchase and sell? It's the most important aspect of the Cargo Refactor, but it wasn't addressed in the Cargo AMA, which is a shame because it hasn't really been addressed since we switched over to the system that currently has us all dipping our ladles into this thin stream of commodity water that's shared between all the servers. But hey, you never know what they got cooking up in the background, so we'll just have to wait and see. Here's where you can make some credits today, regardless of the ships in your hangar. Fly dirty, citizens.